I'm Helen Vivienne Fletcher and this is my assistant's dog Bindi who's going to help with this video today. Now I'm the author of Familiars and Foes, which you can see has a dog just like Bindi in it, I'm here today to read from Accidents and Apparitions, which features in a Witchy Christmas anthology, Jingle Spells. Adeline clasped her arm to her chest, gritting her teeth against the pain. She felt a wave of magic flow out from Clara, but her cousin's spells weren't enough right now, even with both their familiars strengthening them. By now, Adeline should have been able to produce a little healing magic herself, but the pain from her wrist meant her concentration wasn't there. Either way, magic just wasn't cutting it. Go ask the lady if she wants another blanket so you can see the dogs. The nurse's voice rang out from the other side of the curtain. Adeline smiled despite herself. They'd obviously forgotten that curtains aren't soundproof in their excitement to see Coco and Lola. Having heard it too, Clara let out a little laugh, which she suppressed as the nurse came into the room. The nurse was young and had small strings of tinsel twisted around the arms of his glasses. Adeline wondered if it was his first Christmas working in the hospital. The older staff all seemed more harried than cheery. Just wanted to check if you need anything. To his credit, the nurse did manage to keep his focus on Adeline while he asked the question. But as soon as Adeline shook his head, his eyes drifted to Coco, who was lying at the foot of Adeline's bed, and Lola, who was sitting on the floor beside Clara. I know I'm not allowed to pet, but they're so cute. Coco wagged his tail, recognizing the nurse was talking about him. Adeline had been taken to the accident and emergency department a few times since Coco had become her assistant's dog, so she knew the excitement that followed his presence. She was always the favourite patient, with many of the doctors and nurses telling her it had made their night. But she'd underestimated the impact having her cousin and cousin's guide dog in tow would have. They barely had a moment to themselves, with staff popping in and out to see the dogs. She swore they were playing rock, paper, scissors as to who got the pleasure of coming to check her heart rate and blood pressure. Adeline shifted as her arm began to throb, and the nurse snapped back into work mode. Do you need more pain relief, love? When was the last time you had some? He checked her chart. I don't know, but yes, please, if I can. He made a tutting noise as he read her notes. You should have had more an hour ago. Blame the old nurse. I'll get that for you now. He touched her other arm gently, then headed off behind the curtain. Adeline gingerly shifted the ice pack, turning it so the coldest side was on her wrist. You don't have to stay, she told Clara. I could call you a taxi if you want to go finish your shopping. It was Christmas Eve, and she and Clara had been in the A&E for several hours now. Adeline had been in and out of sleep for much of that, so she suspected Clara might be just a touch bored. They decided to meet for coffee that afternoon, as they both had a few last-minute things they needed to get. She'd been feeling off that morning, dizzy and a little nauseous, so she'd almost called Clara to cancel. Now she wished she had. Town had been absolute chaos, with everyone rushing from shop to shop. Adeline had lost count of how many times she'd had to tell people to stop patting Coco or Lola, as the four of them were jostled in the crowd. Don't worry about the shopping, Clara said. I'll stay till Hemi gets here. Adeline felt a flutter of noise at the mention of her partner, Hemi. They'd been together almost a year now, and all was going well, but Adeline still got a little anxious asking him for help, especially when it came to her health. Honestly, if she'd been alone, she might not have called him, but Clara had insisted on it. Besides, once an ambulance had been called, she knew it was only a matter of time before word got back to him that she was on her way to the hospital. How's your arm feeling? Clara asked. Adeline suspected it was a purposeful change of subject. Since they'd met, also nearly a year ago, her long-lost cousin had been particularly good at reading Adeline's emotions. It came with the territory of being a witch, Adeline guessed. Whatever the reason, it was comforting. It hurts, was all Adeline could come up with an answer. But I'm okay. She was still shaking. Shock, she assumed. It really wasn't helping with the pain in her wrist, though, as it jostled against the ice pack. It had been a long time since she'd injured herself this badly during a seizure, as Coco normally alerted her in enough time that she could get down to the ground safely. The crowds in town today and the fact that she was halfway up a staircase when it happened had made that difficult, and her wrist had borne the brunt of the fall. Clara sent another wave of magic. Hopefully they'll get it set soon. Clara was certain that Adeline's arm was broken, though the hospital staff weren't exactly going to take the witch's word for it. They'd been waiting a while for someone to come take her to the x-ray. Adeline knew from experience that hospitals got uncomfortably busy around the holidays, as people indulged in a little too much alcohol and tomfoolery. But today seemed especially so. Adeline got the impression there was something else going on behind the scenes, but she supposed she could find out more about that once Hemi got here. Speaking of which, Clara said, as if Adeline had spoken the thought aloud. The curtain pulled back and Hemi poked his head around it. His expression was one of concern, but it quickly morphed into a cheeky grin when he saw Adeline sitting up in the bed. You know, if you needed more attention, you could have just said, babe. Adeline poked her tongue out at him. She heard Coco and Lola's tails thump in their excitement at recognising a friend. Hemi brushed Adeline's curly mop of hair back from her face, then leaned over and kissed her. You okay? He said quietly, his joking tone gone. Adeline nodded. I'm okay. His face relaxed and he kissed her again. Wow, my ambulance officer didn't do that, a voice called out. Adeline and Hemi looked up to see a somewhat inebriated woman peering into their cubicle from the corridor. She leaned heavily against her IV pole, and Adeline couldn't help wondering if she was about to go splat. Hemi glanced down at his ambulance service uniform, then back at Adeline. This one's a very special patient, he told the lady. Well, thank you for joining me for that reading. I hope you enjoyed it. Jingle Spells is out this week with lots of wonderful stories from connecting to the witchy fiction novellas.